Welcome to Our Stories Matter Courage on Campus. This season, we address the alarming surge of anti Semitism and radicalization on college campuses. With a 477% increase in incidents affecting Jewish students, we explore the mental health impact of polarization, challenge harmful narratives, and seek pathways to resilience.
We'll also hear from those who've left radicalized groups, gaining insight into extremism and a journey toward dismantling hate. Join us as we amplify stories of growth, foster understanding, and drive change.
This episode is really special as we just met with Shoval Tshuva, an Israeli filmmaker, in person and got to talk with her off screen. We got to meet an inspiring, creative, funny young woman who bravely shared her sexual trauma story with the world as a way of trying to inspire others.
Susie, Shoval's short film Funky, which is a powerful exploration of sexual assault, was gaining recognition at film festivals until October 8th. But then she was abruptly canceled just for being an Israeli. And this is a powerful and painful irony. At times when Funky's message about believing survivors is more urgent than ever, Jewish and Israeli women are facing denial and erasure of their experiences of sexual violence that happened during October 7th Hamas attack, despite overwhelming evidence and survivor testimonies.
And in this episode, Cheval shares her experience of being silenced in the industry and how this reflects a broader crisis on college campuses, where Jewish and Israeli women reporting sexual assault are met with skepticism, hostility, or outright denial. We discuss disturbing double standard in survivor advocacy and what this means for the future of truth, justice, and accountability. We hope this episode brings Cheval's voice and the voices of so many others out of the silence.
Because believing all women means believing every woman. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, even when the world would rather look away. Their stories matter, their pain is real, and their truth deserves to be heard.
So, welcome, Cheval. I am super excited to be connecting with you. I am so excited that we met in person and now we're meeting over Zoom for the interview, which I'm so grateful for. I watched Funky several times and I know it was deeply personal, sharing your experience with sexual assault. And so maybe we can just sort of start off with what inspired you to tell your story through film and what impact were you hoping it would have?
First, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this with you. So, I always knew that I wanted to make films. It's been part of me since I remember myself, but I think it took time for me to be comfortable with the kind of stories that I wanted to tell. And it honestly felt very natural to do this. And in many, many ways, I kind of made the film that I needed to see. I wanted a film where the character is choosing herself, choosing her healing and moving forward. I felt like everything that was out there was just like focusing on the assault and the trauma, and I needed a film about moving on.
I love this. Cheval, for the audience who don't know what Funky is about, can you give a snippet?
Funky is a short film about a young woman who's struggling with her intimacy after experiencing sexual assault. Um, Sounds very heavy, but I wanted something that will make people feel better. I wanted something that it's a little bit mixed with humor and a story about moving on.
I love that. And I think, people might wonder, why are we talking about sexual assault and film? But I wonder if you can share your experience of how was the film received before October 8th and how it received afterwards, and put that in the context of what we're seeing that's happening in academia today.
So we started screening Funky in August of 2023. I'm Israeli. I'm the only Israeli who worked on the film. The film was filmed in New York. It's an American film. It's not an Israeli film. We got into several festivals. It seems like we were getting good momentum, and October 7th happened. Somewhere in middle of October, I started getting emails saying that festivals that we were accepted to, like I got some sort of like bizarre email saying we decided not to screen the film. Like after sending materials and after like confirming that I will attend, things shifted completely. I was trying to get answers, I didn't get them. Our last cancellation was in May, during the week of All Eyes on Rafa, a day before the screening. They canceled.
Wow. Wow.
People already had tickets. People never received refunds for those tickets.
And what was the reason? What did they say was the reason?
We decided not to screen your film.
That's it.
Every single one of them, this was kind of like a vague message. And I was trying, like with the one in May, I was already trying to get some sort of like an answer because like I recognized the text. Like if I was completely shocked in the beginning, like also in October, I was still processing like everything that happened. Like I was in the complete shock about October 7th that I couldn't even deal with that. And like in May, I was already asking for more answers, but didn't necessarily got them.
Wow. On so many levels, because one, you're grieving the death of friends from Nova, and then you're grieving who you were before. I mean, this is what I'm experiencing, who we were before October 7th, and then the impact on us after October 7th. And I'm wondering what you think that says about the state of artistic freedom and human rights advocacy when a filmmaker shares a story of survival and then is silenced based on nationality.
It honestly was, I I couldn't believe it was like it didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me that the reason that they don't want to screen the film is because of the fact that I'm Israeli. I was like, it's coming out of a textbook from Nazi Germany. Like I was like, this doesn't make sense. I couldn't believe that was happening. And then I remember I started like asking around and I was told it does. I was told that like I was blacklisted because I'm Israeli. I was told that this has been happening since like 2018. Like some of the people that I was talking to told me that the same thing happens with Russian filmmakers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was just something that, I wrote a film about the experience of being a woman. Like I focused so much on that I forgot that being a Jewish woman or an Israeli woman is comes with a whole lot of stuff that I didn't include.
I mean, what's crazy to me, I mean, you're boycotted, right? Just because you're Israeli. And as you mentioned before, the film got nothing to do with the war, got nothing to do with Israel, got absolutely like there's nothing that is related to it other than the fact that you're Israeli and it talks about your experience. And it reminds me the way people perceive the movie Scream Before Silence, when they're just doubting the assault that happened on October 7th, just because the women are Jewish. There's like this lack of belief. But what you're describing to me, it's like another level because it's got nothing to do with the conflict. It's your own personal experience that you're talking about in a movie of a way of healing, and the fact that this is why the only reason that I push you out, I think it just speaks volume to anti-Semitism and to the state that we are right now. And I hear it quite often from Jewish students and Israeli students that they say that when they're sharing their own story or they're sharing their own trauma or their own pain, people just don't believe them, especially if it's related to either anti-Semitism or to sexual violence. And it plays out, right, in social justice and in advocacy spaces. What message as a survivor does it give you as a survivor? What message do you take out of it when it's coming out of society, when it's coming out of places that should celebrate healing and should celebrate people that are able to move forward?
I mean, the whole thing that happened was dehumanizing in so many different levels. Like I made a film about the most dehumanizing experience that ever happened to me, only get dehumanized because I'm Israeli or Jewish. And it was hard. Obviously, I started questioning myself. I started questioning if the film was even good. I instead of questioning them, I questioned myself, which is something that I also did after the assault. And October 7th was the biggest trigger I've ever had. So there was like a lot of like kind of like waves that came after that with dealing with everything because there were similarities. And I feel like no matter what, something like that, something about like sexual violences and like the news or in the topics, like if you've been through that, it will affect you. But it's honestly the only thing that I have to say is that it's sad and I won't let it stop me or stop me from making art. I was just with Susie at USC and I said that at the panel for the screening. I said, I will always fight hate with love this is just who I am. I like we were talking about that I met someone who's pro-Palestinian. I was like, I'm gonna make you love me. I'm gonna make you change everything you think about Israelis. I'm gonna make you love me.
I mean, it's amazing because like what Shoval, what you're saying at the beginning was compound trauma. And Susan and I've seen it quite often when we talk about traumatic invalidation, is that when people who are suffering or traumatized are then being questioned about their trauma or not being believed or being boycotted or disregard, the healing is so much more difficult then, and it is re-traumatizing. It's like layers on layers on layers, because to validate is to be able to say, I see you and I understand your pain, and this is where healing can actually start. So the fact that you're so extremely resilient and take it to the place of, you will not break me down, I will make you love me, no, even though I'm Israeli, even though I'm Jewish, I think it speaks volume to who you are as a person.
I feel like it's part of who we are as Israelis and Jewish. It's like literally engraved in us. It's like you have to.
It's funny because the more I'm learning, since October 8th, I've been learning more about that, and that it's a Jewish value, Jewish resilience, Jewish joy, helping others. And not my biggest, a big worry I have is that what has happened to you with the film, what's happened on October 8th of, Me Too Unless You're a Jew, is impacting Jewish women, Jewish men about coming forward, that we're not going to be believed. And, I think about like all the progressive movements that I've been involved in, that actually most Jewish Americans have been involved in for sure. And I'm thinking of the messages that are being sent, because even when Shoval came to USC, I was concerned about safety. And, there weren't a lot of people who were RSVPing. There was a lot of stuff happening. So we moved it to a location that was safe. Well, the location that was safe was Chabad. And what happened was that one of the organizations at USC decided to take their logo off because it was going to be at a Jewish organization and, quote unquote, it wasn't diverse. So I have so many worries about Jewish women and Jewish men coming forward. And, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, Cheval, about, you're so brave because you are coming for, I mean, you're coming forward. And so I'm wondering, like, your thoughts about that.
I think it's funny because I think this is what the name of this podcast is, but like our stories matter. This is my take on things. If you will change one person's perspective, that person can change another person's perspective. I'm not saying that this is why I shared my story. I shared my story because it felt right for me, and I feel like it's like for each person who deal with something like that, we all have our different ways through healing. Mine is through art and through filmmaking. And if I can touch other people by doing that, that's the biggest reward. But I want to believe that some people are still open-minded. Some people are not. Like I stopped being friends with a lot of people after October 7th, and people who I used to work with, from like the film scene. And I feel like just because someone say that your story doesn't matter, doesn't mean that it doesn't. Like I feel like we have a voice and we need to use it, and whoever wants to listen is welcome.
There is so much wisdom and so much resilience, especially because you're talking about the aspect of storytelling and how storytelling can be very empowering, and it could also be very, I mean, it can expose you. And, I'm thinking as a trauma therapist, a lot of times this is part of the work that we do with clients, is to do gradual exposure, prolonged exposure to trauma as a way of healing. And you took the story and created something so personal and put it out there. As you said, it's part of the healing, and then my mind goes to, I'm seeing you out there being canceled or being worried, like what Susie mentioned about being in a panel. And I don't know if you were worried, Susie, sounds like you were worried about like safety. And I feel like this is all, again, it's layering the complexity of the situation, especially when we think about sexual assault. Um, I don't know. I mean, you, as a Jewish woman, as a strong woman, what advice can you give other people who might be in a situation where They want to share their story and they're worried about sharing their story, and they don't have your power or your ability. Like, what are some avenues that they can take?
I feel like, first of all, they can start within the community. They can start within like the Jewish community or whichever like community they feel belong to. They could be just for women. They could be just for like it could be just for survivors at first. I remember when I started talking about my assault, I went to photograph a support group for survivors. And I remember like the first thing I said was like, I'm just here to take pictures. I'm not part of this because I didn't feel comfortable yet to say that I am part of this. And I feel like my biggest tip will be do whatever feels comfortable and feels right for you at that moment. Like things that I feel comfortable doing right now, speaking about it as I do right now. I think that if you had told me 7 years ago that this is what I'll do, I would have been like completely shocked and be like, no, there's no way. But I feel like taking even small steps will make a difference at some point.
So, what do you think then universities, film festivals, advocacy organizations, sexual assault organizations can do to ensure that Jewish and Israeli voices are not erased from conversations about sexual violence and healing? And I mean, I'm learning that there's a phrase called erasive anti-Semitism, which is exactly what we're seeing is erasing the voices of Jews and Israelis, especially around sexual assault. So what do you think they can do?
I think what the festivals should have done, like if they were, I honestly, what I think happened was they were scared of me taking the stage during the Q&A and turning things political. I think that what they were scared of is me taking my story and making it as a way to use it in a political platform. And I feel like art should be art. A film festival should be a film festival. And I'm saying for both ways. I feel like it shouldn't be used as a political platform. And I feel like honestly, I really do believe that we can connect with others through art. So I feel like the fact that voices are being censored is actually pushing us further apart instead of like bringing us together. So this is personally what I think the festivals should have done. They should have been like, hey, we want this to be a safe space. We loved your film, but there's also going to be films from like this countries. I think we should all celebrate art together. We would appreciate if nobody will make any political statements. And that's that.
They should have said that at Coachella.
They should have said it in so many festivals. I had a situation where I went to a film festival. There was a guy next to me taking a picture with like a kafia and the pin and whatnot. And I wore a yellow dress and had a hostages pin. We both could stand for what we wanted, and that was fine with that specific festival. But if that's what they wanted, instead of like canceling a film that they already accepted, they could have just been like, hey, focus on the art. That's it.
And with focusing on the art, I would also say focus on the survivors, right? Because I think what's been happening is that people are making stories and the survivor stories a political thing. When you do that, you're treating people as problems and not as human beings. And I think the other side of it is that it can really lead to more binary thinking, like you said, us versus them, and that can lead to radicalization. Right. So when people are more, when they're starting dehumanizing, like you mentioned, Shoval, like you were dehumanized, when this is happening on a more societal level or global level, and we're losing that part of humanity of seeing people as people, then other powers are going to take advantage of that. Because once you get into this binary thinking of black and white, ours is with them, there's only one truth, then we're all more vulnerable to propaganda and to radicalization and to erasing each other.
Yeah. I think this is honestly the biggest issue with all of this is that like I kept joking that people treat this as a sports game. It's like which team that are you rooting for?
Hmm.
And it's
Right.
more nuanced than that. And I feel like this is the main issue that people are not able to understand that multiple things can be true at once. And this is what I was like trying to explain. I remember like after October 7th, there were like several people that I was close to who started posting stuff that were not necessarily correct or like well informed. And at the beginning, I was like, hey, I would love to have a conversation if you're open to it. This is not fully accurate. And I would love to share my perspective. And some people, I had some conversations with people, but there were there was this guy who never even stepped foot in the Middle East who told me that I was brainwashed since I was born. And it's not my fault because he knows that I'm a good person, but I was just brainwashed. And I was like, okay, great, thanks. There's obviously no conversation that we could have. And it's funny because the people who are part of the Middle East, like I know this guy from LA actually, who was in the film scene, and he has family that were in Gaza, and he messaged me after October 7th saying, I hope your family and your friends are all safe. Or like I remember when I posted a video of Natalie sharing her story, it was like, I'm so happy that she's okay. So the fact that like someone from the US who never left even the US will know more about the situation than us does makes no sense to me.
Shoval, as an Israeli student, an international student here in the US, can you speak about your experience of what was that like for you?
So in the beginning it was great. Like I didn't feel any issues because of me being Israeli. It wasn't even something that I had to think about. And most of my friends were actually up until October 7th were not Israeli. And I can't, especially in film, I had zero to none friends that were Israeli or Jewish. And that changed significantly since October 7th. But I was a student during May 2021. I feel like things kind of like shifted from that point. There was this one girl who we were actually good friends. We used to study together at the library. We took a class together. We go to lunch together. She was like someone who I considered a friend. She posted this cartoon of an IDF soldier with the like the Nazi symbol.
Oh no.
And she knew that I was a soldier. I messaged her right away. Like, I was like, I don't understand why you would post this. Oh, and it also said, how's it feels to turn into everything you hate?
Oh,
Something along this. I don't remember the exact quote of what she wrote. And also, like, she knows me. She knows that I will never kill a fly. And I was like, you know that I was a soldier. Like, I was an IDF soldier. And she was like, yeah, you're a baby murderer.
oh,
And I was like, what? And she was like, yes, if you're aligned with this, you're a baby murderer.
whoa.
That was the last time we talked. I blocked her on social media and also blocked her number. I was shocked. And that we're talking about 2021. Things escalated since then. This is like almost every Israeli student experience something along this lines. It's honestly crazy and sad.
I mean, you said 2021. I mean, this is interesting, right? Because a lot of times what we talk about is after October 7th. And I think what people fail to understand, this has been in the go for years and years and years. We weren't aware of that. Or didn't see a lot of the stuff that were happening, or just dismiss it like, oh, people are just they're funny, which they're not, right? Like it's microaggression all the way to real aggression. And to think about your experience as an Israeli student, an immigrant international student who came here, and that is the response. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's mind blowing at this point because we're seeing it on a daily basis. But to me, the interesting part is it started way, way before October 7th, and the risk of how those minds are being brainwashed in academia and how people are becoming more and more extreme because of that. I think we're seeing the results right now. I mean, the Harvard report just came out. It's an inside report. So I don't know if you saw, it's like 300 something pages, not done by a Jewish organization, by the way. Inside, like Harvard did this report by themselves, and they're talking about the amount of anti-Semitism that is going on there.
Yes, I did see it. I mean, I didn't read all 300 pages, but I saw like the main numbers, which are just so overwhelming. And I have to admit, before October 7th, my dad always said anti-Semitism is alive and well. And I always thought it was like a World War II thought process. I drank the Kool-Aid. I was part of DEI, like within, USC, and I didn't include Jewishness or anti-Semitism because I felt that we didn't belong at the table because many American Jews have white skin. So we're white passing. We're not white. I don't identify as white. I identify as Jewish with white skin. So on October 8th, I said we need to include Jewishness and anti Semitism and DEI discussions and meetings. And it's been a challenge because I think the DEI critical race theory, I mean, I know we can do this for like hours and hours, but there's such a focus on the color of your skin. I totally understand how this country began. And Jews are so nuanced. We're not white. And there's a piece where we are seen as the colonizer. The majority of people are in Israel are people of color. I mean, there's Ethiopian Jews. It's crazy that people just don't have this information. And as Cheval, you were saying, it's so nuanced. And I think the brainwashing that your friend was saying that you have experienced brainwashing, it really is academia has experienced brainwashing. And I'm grateful that I'm out of it.
I mean, I back to your point about the whiteness. In one of my like first classes in college, we're talking about 2017, 2018, like one of my first like years or semesters. I took a class that was focused on gender, race, and sexuality, something like that. Usually, I was the last person to have a conversation in class. I was very, 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 very quiet. We came a long way since then. But the professor told me that I'm white because I'm Jewish. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm Middle Eastern. Like I was born in Israel. I'm not white. And he was like, no, 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 you're Jewish. You're white. And I was like, oh, so now you're going to tell me what I am. And it was like, your ancestors are from Europe. And I was like, well, some of them, but some of them are not. Like he couldn't move any other way. He was like, you're Jewish, you're white. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And we got into a fight in the classroom. And that was like the first time that I was like, this is so weird. Like this professor is like an educator and he's like influencing the minds of people that are younger. Like also I did college later in life because I did the army for 2 years. And so he's influencing people's mind and he's not willing to move anywhere from his little box. And he's like, you're Jewish, you're white.
Can you imagine if anyone said that to a Black person? You're not Black. You are American. Skin color doesn't matter. I mean, in this country, I admit I have privilege of having white skin. I'm not white. I'm still a Jew that has a lot of experiences of oppression, of stereotyping. I have white skin, so yeah, that's a privilege. But maybe someone who, like, for example, Yehuda Price, who we have interviewed, he is a Black Jewish Orthodox man who was formerly incarcerated, born to a Muslim mother. He said he's experienced more anti Semitism than racism. So I can't imagine telling someone what their identity is. What other group would say that that is okay?
I just remember that he said that. He was like, in America, you're white. Like, and I was like, okay, thank you.
I'm not even surprised because this, I think I talked about it in the previous season. Like that happened to me in grad school when I was told in the DEI class, you're Jewish, you're white, stand over there. And I had exactly the same reaction, by the way. So I was like, what do you mean I'm white? I'm Middle Eastern. Like the fact that this is how the West is defining us is it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Right. No other group would accept this. No other group would accept it.
I never before coming here, I never had to like to write in a box what I am. And I remember like the first time that I had to do that was on birthright. And I was like, what is this question? Like I was like, what is this? I didn't understand.
Well, I think it's interesting also. I know that this can go on to a different topic, but another thought with domestic violence, intimate partner violence, sexual assault is that with the Consensus Bureau, there is no checkbox for Jewish. So we have to check either white or other. And the problem with that is that there is no data about the impact of sexual assault and domestic violence on Jews in this country because they don't even have a checkbox for us. I don't even know what to check. The funny thing is, my mom, she wasn't thinking this, but she hated that question. And she refused to check either. But it's like, I want us recorded. I want the research out because there is none.
Well, you're erasing part of your identity, especially as a survivor that's already being, like Cheval said so eloquently, was already erased in a way.
Erasure. That's it. It goes back to a race of anti-Semitism. So being at USC, it's fascinating right now because graduation is around the corner, and we always have students saying a greeting in different languages. Okay, I'm sure you know where this is going. So last year, no student wanted to say the greeting in Hebrew because they were afraid of being doxxed. So an Israeli professor did the greeting. Okay, now we're back to the same thing. And I'm an advisor to the Jewish Student Affinity Group where Shoval, collaborated with for her film. They don't want to do the greeting because they're so afraid of being doxxed. They also said, we want our families to be happy and proud and not worried. So this was the final hour last night where I was thinking, oh my God, again, Jews are being erased and we're being erased on college campuses. We had only until midnight tonight to come up with something. And I thought, who wouldn't be afraid? Who wouldn't be afraid to say the Hebrew greeting? And then I thought of the person. This is like the craziest story. So the person was my former co-host on the podcast, James DeBacco. He was formerly incarcerated for 28 years, and he was a former Aryan lieutenant while he was in prison. So hated Jews, but he said it was more for survival, which is so true because I was like, wait, maybe he won't be afraid. So I called him last night and he said, are you kidding? Of course I will stand with the Jewish community. I will be loud and proud and say the Hebrew greeting. Okay. So I say all that. How are you feeling about coming out in terms of like your vulnerability and your safety?
I'm not hiding who I am. Like, I remember when this whole situation started happening with the festival, someone told me to delete the line from my bio that I was born and raised in Israel. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm definitely not hiding who I am, but also now it's not like this anymore. But there were times that I didn't feel safe in New York, or I didn't feel comfortable saying where I'm from. That month and a half, like 2 months after like October 7th, it felt like we kind of like went back into a time machine that was same but different. And it was scary. It was really, really, really scary. I remember walking down Soho and someone screaming like kill all the Jews.
Whoa.
And it was New York. Like, I didn't speak Hebrew on the street for like 6 months. If I was talking to my mom or if I was talking to someone who speaks in Hebrew, I would be speaking English, like back to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Reminds me of you, Mary.
Yeah, I was sharing with Susie and our listener last season that I was when I took my son to New York um, on November after October 7th, I was afraid of speaking Hebrew to him. And he gave me like the look like, what do you mean we can't talk Hebrew? Like he's young. And I had to explain to him what is anti-Semitism and why this triggers this trauma response for me, where this is what my grandparents and my parents used to tell me when we would travel abroad. Um,
Yeah. It really like my great grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. And like there was like so many things that like that happened last year that like really reminded me of like things that she used to talk about. I kept thinking that in a way I'm happy that she wasn't alive to witness it, because I feel like that would bring so much trigger and trauma for her. And it was like I honestly like I was in complete disbelief that we were in that situation, that like I feel uncomfortable sharing where I'm from. I would say that like now that I was in LA, I was with a friend of mine who is amazing. She's an ally. She's from Europe originally. And I was like thinking about like what to post on social media, and she was like, "Oh, post that you're here." And I'm always a little scared about this because I don't want people to know where I am. And I was like, listen, might not be the smartest move. Like, no, I will not do that. So I guess it's like it's in the back of my head without even thinking about it.
This is so interesting because there you are speaking about the most intimate thing, scary thing that happened to you, sexual trauma, in a movie, and saying that you're Israeli is what you're afraid of doing. Like, this is the part that you feel like you need to hide, that part of your identity. Like, that, I hope people can let it sink in. Like, people don't usually talk loudly about their trauma, usually because it's, associate with unjustified shame and a lot of emotions that are hard for people to come to heal from. And there you are saying, this is not the part I'm worried about sharing. I'm worried about sharing that I'm Israeli.
I feel like, sorry that I cut you off. I feel like with the assault and the sexual trauma, like it happened long time ago. And I know that I'm not the like I have nothing to be ashamed of. Like I didn't do anything wrong, and it's never ever ever the survivor's like fault. So I feel like I had a long time to process it before this film would like before this film even came out or before I even made it. I mean, making Funky was in many ways a healing experience. Again, that whole other part of who I am that I didn't even think about. Like I didn't even think that that was an issue when I made the film. Also, like the whole thing about Zionist being a Zionist, like I was like, what? Like I was like, the last I heard about Zionism or like someone being a Zionist was when my great grandfather moved to Israel from Poland. Like I didn't know that was the thing.
That's what, remember at our dinner, that's what Tamar was talking about. She was like, I've never talked about Zionism or anti-Zionism. I mean, that's just not a conversation. And it's like I don't think America's talking about should America exist or not, or should Ukraine exist or not. No one's having these conversations. I mean, it is bizarre.
Yeah, no, it was like I remember the first time someone called me a Zionist, I was like, okay, my great grandfather would be so proud.
Right.
So even though you're experiencing all this rejection and you continue to speak out and going to campuses and doing panels, what helped you stay grounded? Like, how do you find the courage, and what do you do for healing and for being able to continue this journey of yours, even though there's like this painful rejection?
I do have to say that I went back to therapy. I stopped therapy for some time, but I went back. I guess for many reasons. I guess October 7th and bunch of stuff, but I do go to therapy and I think it's amazing and I encourage people to take care of themselves. Also, I feel like having a good support system, like my parents are incredible, my friends are incredible, meeting incredible people along the way, like you too. I feel like surround yourself with people that ground you, support you, believe in you. It's funny, like I was this weekend, one of my friends, she's a DJ, and I went to see her play, and I'm the last person to be, and like this is so out of my comfort zone, but like she's my friend, so I go to support her every single time she plays. I'm there. And someone was like, wow, this is like so funny because this is so unlike you. All of a sudden now you're like the plug and like telling us, oh, she's playing here, let's go. And I am my friend's biggest supporter and biggest like cheerleader. I would be there. I don't do it to get anything back, but like I do get a lot of it back.
I love that because then hearing that, because you were so in solidarity with others, which is what I was saying at the beginning, how a lot of American Jews were involved in like the civil rights movement and, BLM, like all of it. So, what does solidarity mean to you now? And what kind of support would feel most meaningful, not just performative, in this moment?
For people to be open-minded and just listen. Like I feel like it's so simple. It's so simple. Just listen. Don't question. Listen. Be there and listen to what other people has to say, and a lot of them has so much to say.
Yeah.
And that's I guess the smallest step that I would ask for. Just listen fully, not hearing, listening.
Yes. Yes.
It's I always say you need to be able to listen to understand, not for responding. Because I think a lot of times people are asking questions and they don't really care about the answer. I just had this event with Anila Ali about the sexual assault of October 7th. And it was so interesting because the whole panel, we talked about the using rape as a weapon of war and believing all women. And there was a screening of a movie that shows like evidence, like you cannot, you literally see naked bodies. Like you can't say, I thought that you can't say anything about it. And then one of the questions at the end was exactly about, well, basically questioning the validity of the movie because it talks about Jewish women and how the person who asked the question basically said it's part of Israeli propaganda and how, Israel is using it to justify what's happening in Gaza. And I got so energized by this question because, like I was saying, like it proved the point of traumatic invalidation and how people you don't listen. You literally sat through a whole presentation of a movie. You There was a whole panel in the we didn't talk about the war. My colleague Anila was actually talking, giving an example of a Muslim woman who was raped and murdered, and yet you still make it about politics. And the part of me that got upset is that I knew that the person who's asking the question is not listening to me when I'm giving the answer, and I actually called it out of like I wish people would engage in conversation so we can actually see human beings again. You can challenge me anytime. I always say that. I mean, don't take what I say for granted. Challenge me, but come and challenge and have a conversation. Be willing to hear my answers as well. So, sorry, that was just a spiel because I got so upset. And it connects exactly to what you were saying, Cheval. And to me, it just sits totally under that traumatic invalidation framework of not seeing the trauma of the person and seeing politics instead, and seeing and or politicizing the trauma under, like, nationality and religion and other stuff, and not listening to the stories because the stories matter, not pun intended. Okay, so what message, Cheval, would you like to leave for other survivors that might be listening to us, especially those who feel that their voice right now specifically is being erased?
Wow. I just hope that they know that they're not alone. Their voice matter, their story matter, that their experience matter, that if they feel like they want to talk about it, which I know it's difficult, but it's brave and important, and it's not easy, that they have nothing to hide, that they're not the ones who should be ashamed.
I love that. Yeah, and it takes so much bravery, and I find myself being more courageous with what I say because I met Mary, because I met you, because I'm meeting so many people that you were saying before. It's sort of having that village around us. So as we're closing out, we always ask these final two questions. One is, what are you going to do for your own healing this week?
I have therapy tomorrow.
Nice.
I mean, I do a lot of things for myself and for my health and like mental health. I work out like every morning-ish, like 5 times a week. So, and that I feel clears my head and grounds me. But I also like write in the mornings. I try to think about every morning. I try to think about 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I feel like that starts my day with like so much positivity. Like I'm already like happier. I do a lot of things that are for me and for my mental health. And I was like bringing up the friend earlier, but I have one of those friends that I keep joking that she's like my crystal, that like I recharge when I'm with her.
Oh, I love that.
So I feel like find someone like that.
And last question for you. What is it like to share your story with us today?
I mean, it felt so like safe and easy, and I really enjoyed talking to you both. I already met both of you before, so and I got to meet you in person last week, which was a lot of fun.
So
Which
much fun.
yeah, but it was honestly so great.
We loved having you. It was so beautiful to have met you in person first. We haven't done that. I mean, I think probably Arno and Mubin for Mary, but both of us together, I don't think so. I love who you are. I love your heartbeat. I love your courage and your bravery. And yeah, you definitely give me hope. So thank you so much for sharing your voice.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'd like to thank our listeners, Israeli music composer Jonathan Bargiora, editor Ian Phillips, podcast advisor Donna Fazari, and special thanks to the Academic Engagement Network for their generous support. Today's episode is co-produced by Associate Professor Susie Hess and Dr. Miri Bar Halprin. Our Stories Matter, Courage on Campus is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and our website at traumainformedla.org.
Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.